Why do you wake up every single day feeling like you're living someone else's life? Why is it that, even after conquering everything that should make you happy, there's still this black hole inside you that never gets filled? You check all the boxes. Good job, decent relationships, respectable social status. Yet here you are, scrolling through your phone at 2 a.m., wondering if this emptiness gnawing at your chest is all there is. You tell yourself it's normal, that everyone feels this way sometimes. But deep down, you know something is fundamentally wrong. The truth is, you don't have a weak purpose. You have a wrong purpose, and that's infinitely worse than having no purpose at all. Carl Jung, the psychiatrist who revolutionized our understanding of the human psyche, discovered that 99% of people live borrowed purposes. Their parents' dreams, society's expectations, the ego's fantasies. And this isn't just sad, it's psychologically destructive. Like trying to force your left hand to write with your right brain, it creates a split that tears you apart from the inside. Today I'm going to show you how Jung discovered the only path to finding your true purpose, the one that doesn't come from outside, but emerges from the depths of your soul like an irresistible force. Not the purpose that looks good on paper, but the one that sets your entire existence on fire with meaning. The origin of your emptiness. Jung identified that your problem began in childhood, when you were forced to wear a social mask, what he called the persona, to be accepted. Gradually, you forgot who you really were underneath that mask. And now you're trapped in a prison of your own making. The betrayal of the persona. Remember when you were 5 years old and you said you wanted to be an astronaut, or an artist, or a dragon tamer? Remember the light in your eyes when you talked about it? Then remember the first time an adult laughed, or said, "Be realistic," or asked, "How will you make money doing that?" That was the moment you learned to betray yourself for acceptance. You learned to live to impress others instead of expressing your essence. The distorted collective unconscious. You absorbed prefabricated purposes from society without questioning them. Success equals money. Happiness equals marriage. Security equals conformity. These aren't your dreams. They're mass-produced illusions sold to you as wisdom. You swallowed them whole because questioning them felt dangerous, rebellious, selfish. The repressed shadow. The parts of yourself that didn't fit the acceptable image, you buried them. Your wildness, your creativity, your rage, your authentic desires, all buried alive. But Jung discovered something terrifying. These repressed parts don't disappear. They become your shadow, sabotaging your life from the unconscious, ensuring that no borrowed purpose ever truly satisfies you. Look at your daily life through this lens. Really look. At work. Did you choose your career because it resonated with your soul? Or because it was practical, respected, secure? Do you wake up excited to contribute your unique gifts to the world? Or do you drag yourself to a job that slowly kills something beautiful inside you? You tell yourself you're being responsible. But Jung would say you're being cowardly, choosing safety over authenticity, approval over aliveness. In your relationships, do you seek connection or approval? When you're with people, are you being yourself or performing a version of yourself that you think they'll like? Do you speak your truth or say what keeps the peace? You wonder why your relationships feel shallow. But how can anyone love you deeply when you're not even showing them who you really are? In your decisions. When facing a choice, what's your first question? Is it, what does my heart want? Or, what will people think? You've trained yourself to be a people pleaser, a peacekeeper, a good little soldier in the army of social expectations. But your soul is screaming for revolution. In solitude. This is the most revealing test of all, when you're completely alone, with no one to impress or perform for. How do you feel? If the answer is lost, anxious, or empty, it's because you've forgotten how to be with yourself. You've become so dependent on external validation that you don't even know who you are without it. Jung discovered that this is the universal crisis of midlife. The moment when the mask stops working and you're forced to confront your existential emptiness. It's not your fault. It's not a personal failure. It's the inevitable result of living someone else's dream. Your soul is calling you to wake up, and it will use whatever means necessary to get your attention. But here's what most people don't understand about this wake-up call. The rebellion of your soul. Jung called this the neurosis of emptiness. When you live false purposes, your psyche rebels through symptoms: depression, anxiety, addictions, toxic relationships. These aren't diseases to be medicated away. They're alarm signals from your soul, screaming that you're betraying your deepest truth. Your depression isn't a chemical imbalance. It's existential suffocation. You're dying inside because you're not living. Your anxiety isn't irrational fear. It's the terror of wasting your one precious life on someone else's script. Your insomnia isn't a sleep disorder. It's your body refusing to rest while your soul is in agony. Your mental and physical health are collapsing. You have what Jung called existential depression, a sadness that no amount of therapy or medication can touch because it's not pathological. It's spiritual. You're grieving the death of your authentic self. Your anxiety is chronic because you're constantly betraying yourself, living in a state of internal war. Your body is exhausted because it takes enormous energy to maintain a false identity 24 hours a day. The addictions? They're not weakness. They're desperate attempts to silence the voice inside that keeps whispering, "This isn't your life." Alcohol, drugs, shopping, sex, social media, work, anything to drown out the soul's relentless demand for authenticity. But the voice always comes back, doesn't it? Stronger and more insistent each time. Your relationships are mirrors of your self-betrayal. You attract people who keep you trapped in your prison of falseness. Why? Because like attracts like. If you're living inauthentically, you'll magnetize others who are also hiding from themselves. You'll find yourself in relationships where you have to constantly perform, where love feels conditional, where you walk on eggshells trying to be what they want. You experience profound loneliness, even when surrounded by people, because nobody can love the real you. They've never met the real you. You've never shown them. The relationships feel superficial because they are. How can you have deep connection when you're connecting mask to mask instead of soul to soul? The conflicts are endless because you're at war with yourself. And that inner war spills into every interaction. You say yes when you mean no. You smile when you want to scream. You agree when you want to rebel. Then you resent others for not reading your mind, for not loving the person you're afraid to be. Your life potential is dying inside you. This is the tragedy that Jung found most heartbreaking. You have unique gifts, talents that exist nowhere else in the universe. They're dying inside you, unexpressed, unlived. You're like a musician who never plays their music, a poet who never writes their poems, a healer who never touches anyone. You're living the modern tragedy of Sisyphus, forever pushing the same boulder up the same mountain, day after day, year after year. The same empty routines, the same meaningless conversations, the same hollow victories that taste like ash in your mouth. You're aging without ever having truly lived. You've lost all connection to the sacred. When you're not living authentically, you lose access to what Jung called the transcendent function, your ability to connect with something larger than yourself. Life becomes mechanical, predictable, dead. You go through the motions, but the magic is gone. You exist, but you don't live. The worst part? You know this. Deep down, you know you're sleepwalking through your own existence. You catch glimpses of your authentic self in dreams, in moments of solitude, in flashes of creative inspiration that you quickly dismiss as unrealistic, but you know. And that knowing is both your curse and your salvation. The false escape. Most people, when they reach this point of crisis, try to solve it by changing external circumstances. New job, new relationship, new city, new wardrobe, new diet, new hobby. They think the problem is out there somewhere, so the solution must be out there too. But Jung discovered this is like a prisoner trying to escape by redecorating their cell. You're not trapped by your circumstances. You're trapped by your fear of being yourself. You can move to Paris, marry a saint, win the lottery, and you'll still wake up empty because you're still not living as who you really are. The self-help industry feeds you this lie. Find your passion, follow your bliss, live your best life. But they're selling you another external solution to an internal problem. They're trying to give you a fish instead of teaching you that you are the ocean. The sacred wound becomes your superpower. But here's where Jung's genius reveals itself. He discovered the process of individuation, the heroic journey of becoming who you really are. This isn't about finding your purpose outside yourself. This is about becoming your purpose. Your entire life becomes the expression of something sacred that lives inside you. Think of a seed buried in darkness. It doesn't find its purpose of becoming a tree. It is that purpose. When conditions are right, it cannot do anything but grow toward the light. The darkness doesn't destroy it. The darkness is necessary for its transformation. Your purpose isn't out there waiting to be discovered. It's inside you, waiting to emerge. Every wound, every failure, every moment of despair has been preparing you for this emergence. Jung called this the wounded healer archetype. Your greatest pain contains your greatest gift. Your weakness becomes strength. Those parts of yourself you've been ashamed of, they're not bugs in your programming. They're features. Your sensitivity isn't weakness. It's your superpower for understanding others. Your rage isn't destructive. It's your soul's refusal to accept injustice. Your weirdness isn't something to hide. It's what makes you irreplaceable. But to access this transformation, you must do the thing that terrifies you most. The sacred return to yourself. Jung discovered the process of individuation, the heroic journey of becoming who you really are. This isn't about finding your purpose. It's about becoming your purpose. Your entire life becomes the expression of something greater that lives inside you, something that has been waiting patiently for you to stop running and finally come home to yourself. Here's the profound shift Jung uncovered. You are not someone who has a purpose. You are someone who is a purpose. You are not a human being trying to find meaning. You are meaning itself, clothed in human form, temporarily forgetting your own divine nature. The seed knows its destiny. Imagine a mighty oak seed buried deep in dark soil. It doesn't wake up one morning and think, I wonder what my purpose is. Maybe I should be a rose bush. That seems more popular. The seed doesn't find its purpose of becoming an oak tree. It is that purpose. When conditions align, it cannot do anything but grow toward the light. The darkness doesn't destroy it. The darkness is absolutely necessary for its transformation. This is you. You are that seed. Your authentic self isn't lost. It's germinating. Every year you've spent in darkness, every moment of confusion and pain, every crisis that brought you to your knees, this wasn't punishment. This was preparation. Your soul has been composting your false identities, breaking down everything that isn't truly you, creating the rich soil from which your authentic purpose can finally emerge. The seed doesn't struggle against the darkness. It uses the darkness. It doesn't apologize for taking up space. It knows it belongs here. It doesn't ask permission to grow. It grows because growth is its nature. This is what Jung discovered. When you stop fighting your authentic nature and start cooperating with it, miracles become inevitable. The great reframing. Everything you thought was wrong with you is about to be revealed as exactly right. Jung called this the integration of opposites, the moment when your wounds become your weapons. Your shame becomes your strength. Your brokenness becomes your beauty. What was weakness becomes strength. Those wounds you've been hiding, they're not scars to be ashamed of. They're sacred openings where the light gets in. Your depression gave you depth. Your anxiety gave you sensitivity. Your failures gave you compassion. Your loneliness gave you the ability to understand other lonely souls. You weren't broken. You were being broken open. What was confusion becomes clarity. That chaos swirling inside you isn't mental illness. It's spiritual labor. You're giving birth to your authentic self. And like all births, it's messy, painful, and absolutely necessary. The confusion isn't a problem to solve. It's information to integrate. Each conflicting impulse represents a different aspect of your complex, beautiful, multifaceted soul trying to be acknowledged. What was pain becomes fuel. Your suffering wasn't meaningless. It was preparation. Every betrayal taught you discernment. Every loss taught you what truly matters. Every moment of despair carved out space in your soul for joy to live. Jung understood that our deepest wounds become our greatest sources of power, not despite the pain, but because of it. What was isolation becomes independence. Those years of feeling like you didn't fit anywhere, you weren't being rejected, you were being protected. Your soul was keeping you from settling for connections that would diminish you, relationships that would require you to betray yourself, communities that would demand you wear a mask. Your solitude was your cocoon, and now you're ready to emerge with wings. The magnetic authenticity. Here's what happens when you stop trying to be who others want you to be and start expressing who you really are. Something magical occurs. You become magnetic. Not the desperate magnetism of someone trying to impress, but the effortless magnetism of someone who has finally come home to themselves. The right people are drawn to your authenticity like metal to a magnet. The right opportunities appear because you're no longer hiding your gifts behind a mask of false humility. The right circumstances align because you've stopped swimming against the current of your own nature and started flowing with the river of who you were always meant to be. Your energy changes completely. Instead of the exhausting effort of maintaining a false persona, you feel energized by simply being yourself. Instead of constantly monitoring what others think, you're free to focus on what you're creating, contributing, becoming. Instead of seeking approval, you start trusting your own inner guidance. You discover that what you thought made you weird actually makes you wonderful. What you thought made you too much actually makes you exactly enough. What you thought made you unmarketable actually makes you irreplaceable. The soul's recognition. When you finally align with your authentic purpose, your body knows it. Your soul recognizes the homecoming. There's a deep exhale that happens, not just in your lungs, but in your entire being. The chronic tension you've carried for years begins to dissolve. The insomnia fades because you're no longer afraid to dream. The anxiety diminishes because you're no longer at war with yourself. You start having what Jung called numinous experiences, moments when you feel connected to something infinite and sacred. Time disappears when you're engaged in activities that express your authentic nature. You feel held by a larger purpose, supported by an intelligence greater than your individual will. People start saying things like, "You seem different, and there's something about you," because there is something about you. You've stopped hiding who you are. You've stopped apologizing for taking up space. You've stopped asking permission to exist fully. But this transformation requires you to do the one thing your ego has been desperately trying to avoid: the courage to disappoint everyone. You must do the thing that terrifies you most: disappoint people. Not out of cruelty, but out of love. Love for your authentic self, and paradoxically, love for them. Because when you stop being who they want you to be, you give them permission to stop being who they think you want them to be. You set everyone free by freeing yourself first. Jung understood that this is the ultimate act of rebellion and the ultimate act of service. You cannot save anyone by sacrificing yourself on the altar of their expectations. You cannot love anyone authentically while hating yourself for being inauthentic. You cannot contribute your gifts to the world while hiding those gifts behind a mask of false humility. The people who truly love you will celebrate your authenticity, even if it challenges them. The people who only loved your persona will be upset, and that's information, not condemnation. They were never loving you anyway. They were loving their projection of who they needed you to be to make them comfortable. The sacred question that changes everything. Jung discovered that most people ask the wrong question entirely. They ask, "What is my purpose?" But that question assumes your purpose is separate from you, something external to be discovered, captured, and possessed. It treats purpose like a treasure hunt, where you're the seeker and purpose is the prize. But Jung found that the transformative question is, what is trying to be born through me? This question recognizes that you are not the seeker. You are the vessel. You are not trying to find your purpose. Your purpose is trying to find expression through you. You are not the hunter. You are the channel through which something sacred flows into the world. This shift changes everything. Instead of desperately searching outside yourself, you begin listening inside yourself. Instead of trying to force doors open, you begin noticing which doors open effortlessly. Instead of swimming against the current of your nature, you begin flowing with the river of who you've always been. The whispers before the thunder. Your authentic purpose doesn't arrive with fanfare and fireworks. It comes as whispers before it becomes thunder. It shows up in what you're naturally curious about, what makes you lose track of time, what you can't stop talking about even when others' eyes glaze over. It lives in your spontaneous reactions, your instinctive responses, the things you do without thinking that others find remarkable. Pay attention to what angers you. Injustices that make your blood boil often point toward your purpose. Pay attention to what moves you to tears. The beauty that breaks your heart open is often calling you toward your sacred work. Pay attention to what you judge in others. Sometimes we judge most harshly the very gifts we're afraid to express ourselves. Your purpose is already trying to live through you, but you've been too busy trying to be someone else to notice. It's in your natural way of encouraging others. Your instinct to create beauty, your compulsion to solve certain types of problems, your ability to see what others miss. The end of seeking approval. When you finally understand that your purpose comes from within, something profound shifts in how you relate to other people. You stop performing for their approval because you no longer need their validation to know who you are. You stop trying to convince them you're worthy because you've remembered your inherent worth. This doesn't make you selfish or callous. It makes you genuinely generous. When you're not constantly seeking approval, you can actually see other people clearly instead of seeing them as potential sources of validation. When you're not desperate for their love, you can love them freely. When you're not afraid of their judgment, you can offer them your authentic gifts. You start making decisions based on inner guidance rather than outer expectations. You choose relationships that nourish your soul rather than ones that feed your ego. You pursue work that expresses your essence rather than just pays your bills. You create a life that feels like home to your spirit rather than a prison for your potential. The integration of all parts. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you were always meant to be by integrating all the scattered pieces of yourself. Your light and your shadow, your strength and your vulnerability, your masculine and feminine aspects, your rational mind and your intuitive wisdom. You stop trying to be perfect and start being whole. You stop hiding your flaws and start seeing them as part of your unique signature on reality. You stop apologizing for your intensity and start channeling it into your sacred work. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable and start expanding into your full magnificent presence. This integration creates what Jung called the transcendent function, a bridge between your conscious and unconscious mind that allows you to access wisdom beyond your ordinary thinking. You start receiving insights, guidance, creative solutions that seem to come from somewhere deeper and wiser than your everyday awareness. The inevitability of your becoming. Here's what Jung understood that most people miss. When you're living authentically, aligned with your true nature, expressing your essential purpose, life starts working with you instead of against you. Not because the external world changes to accommodate you, but because you've stopped fighting the current of your own soul. Opportunities appear that are perfectly aligned with your gifts. People show up who need exactly what you have to offer. Circumstances align in ways that feel almost magical because you're no longer swimming upstream against your own nature. You're flowing with the force that moves planets and grows forests and beats your heart without your conscious effort. This isn't positive thinking or manifestation magic. It's basic physics. When you stop wasting energy on being someone you're not, all that energy becomes available for becoming who you are. When you stop resisting your authentic nature, you tap into the same creative intelligence that turns seeds into trees and transforms caterpillars into butterflies. But knowing this intellectually isn't enough. The final step requires action, the sacred practice that changes everything. Jung discovered that transformation doesn't happen through grand gestures or dramatic revelations. It happens through a single, sacred practice that you can begin right now, in this moment, wherever you are. Stop asking, "What is my purpose?" Start asking, "What is trying to be born through me?" This isn't just a different question. It's a completely different relationship with life itself. When you ask, "What is my purpose?" you're positioning yourself as someone who lacks something essential, someone on the outside looking for a way in. But when you ask, "What is trying to be born through me?" you recognize that you're already connected to the creative force of the universe. You're not searching for purpose. You're serving as purpose's expression. Listen. Right now, in the silence between your thoughts, something is stirring. Some dream, some calling, some vision of who you could become if you stopped being afraid. Some creative impulse, some way of serving others, some contribution only you can make. It's been whispering to you for years, maybe decades. You've been calling it unrealistic, impractical, impossible. But what if it's not a fantasy? What if it's a prophecy? the revolutionary act of self-honoring. Your authentic purpose doesn't need to make sense to anyone else. It doesn't need to fit into existing categories or career paths. It doesn't need to guarantee financial success or social approval. It only needs to feel true in your bones, to make you feel more alive when you imagine living it, to fill you with energy instead of draining it away. Start small. Start secret if you need to, but start. Take one tiny action today that honors who you really are instead of who you think you should be. Write the first paragraph of the book that's been living in your heart. Sign up for the class that excites you, even though it's impractical. Have the conversation you've been avoiding. Say no to something that depletes you and yes to something that feeds your soul. Jung understood that authenticity isn't a destination. It's a daily practice. Every day, you have hundreds of tiny choices between being who you are and being who others expect you to be. Every choice toward authenticity makes the next choice easier. Every small act of self-honoring builds momentum toward a life that feels like home. The ripple effect of authentic living. When you finally stop betraying yourself, something miraculous happens. You become a permission slip for everyone around you to do the same. Your authenticity gives others permission to be authentic. Your courage gives others permission to be courageous. Your refusal to live a borrowed life inspires others to examine their own borrowed dreams. This is how you change the world. Not by trying to fix everyone else, but by becoming so fully yourself that others remember who they are too. This is the highest service you can offer humanity. The example of a human being who has come home to themselves. The question that demands an answer. Here's what I want you to do right now before you scroll away, before you get distracted, before the voice of practicality drowns out the voice of your soul. If you had the absolute courage to live only for yourself, not selfish living, but authentic living, without caring about anyone else's opinion, what would you do differently starting tomorrow morning? What conversation would you finally have? What creative project would you finally start? What relationship would you finally end or begin? What risk would you finally take? What truth would you finally speak? What dream would you finally pursue? Don't think about it. Feel into it. What's the first thing that comes to mind? That flash of knowing before your rational mind steps in with all its reasonable objections? That's not random. That's your soul speaking. Leave your answer in the comments. Not because I need to know, but because you need to declare it. Sometimes we have to speak our truth out loud for it to become real. Sometimes we have to make our private dreams public commitments. Sometimes the act of witnessing transforms possibility into inevitability. The only truth that matters. Your purpose is not something you find. It's something you become when you finally stop running from yourself. You are not broken. You were never broken. You are a sacred being who temporarily forgot your own magnificence while trying to fit into a world that was never designed for your uniqueness. You are not too much or too little or too different. You are exactly what this world needs, exactly when it needs it, exactly as you are. The emptiness you've been feeling isn't the absence of purpose. It's the presence of unexpressed purpose. It's your soul's way of saying, I'm ready. Are you? Jung spent his entire life studying the human psyche, and his conclusion was simple. Your greatest contribution to humanity is becoming fully human yourself. Not the sanitized, socially acceptable version of human, but the raw, real, magnificently imperfect human you were born to be. Stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for the perfect moment. Stop waiting to feel ready. Your soul has been ready your entire life, It's been waiting patiently for you to catch up, to remember, to come home. The question isn't whether you have a purpose. The question is whether you have the courage to live it. Your purpose is not something you find. It's something you become when you stop running from who you've always been. Now stop reading about your life and start living it.